This presentation is for informational purposes only and is not offered as legal or professional advice regarding any particular matter. No person should act on the basis of this presentation without seeking appropriate professional advice. The speaker's views expressed in this program may not be reflective of those of anyone else, including their respective firms or any of its lawyers, associates, or clients.
Welcome to Supercharged Supply Chain, a podcast that delves into the complex, complicated, and ever-changing world of getting product from a source to a destination with your hosts, Ron Liebman and Joseph Paris. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Supercharged Supply Chain. I'm Joseph Paris, and my co-host is Ron Liebman. How you doing today, Ron?
I am fine, Joe. Hello to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a harried week for you and myself, I understand. You know, I'm down here in Florida. I don't know if you know that. Got a bit of an assignment here, turning some wrenches. Not something I'm normally doing, but this particular project had me called into it, so here I am. And you had a busy week too.
Yeah, I closed a $50 million revolving financing for a client.
Good for you. Good for you.
So that's why I look so tired.
Well, I've been burning the midnight oil here too. It's been some long days. They get a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges, but that's we're problem solvers. That's what you and I do for a living. So sometimes you have to find where the true nature of the problem is, and I think that brings us to the topic of today's conversation. If you think about it, supply chain as we know it today, it being 2021, as we know it today, is only 30 years old. 1990. Think about 1990. Ronald Reagan was just out of office. It was the George Bush senior tenure. The Soviet Union had just crumbled, or it was crumbling, and the whole world was opened up to commerce, and people were applying what they knew about supply chain, and they were just extrapolating what was known locally and figuring it could be applied globally. Mm-hmm. And I think that what we've seen over the last few years, between tariffs, trade wars, COVID, I think that we've seen these, we'll call it this native knowledge, being challenged. What was book smarts back in 1990, 1995 is being strained today. What do you see? What do you think?
We've talked in the past about the effect of COVID on the supply chain. We've talked in the past about the thought process, even pre-COVID, about what we've developed in what the world now calls a supply chain, which is basically the intersection of transportation and purchasing, finance, the various functions that go into creating product movement, product manufacturing, and sale in the world. And what I think has happened is we've gotten away from, it's funny, root cause analysis. People love that term today, root cause analysis. Let's look at what the problem is. Well, maybe some issues with supply chain are as simple as we don't teach practitioners, logisticians like you and I, the basics of the supply chain. We just say, hey, let's use these high-fluting ideas and algorithms and computers, and that's going to make everything better. And so to me, we're moving forward at an incredibly fast pace to try to change what is going on. I'm not 100% sure we really know where we're going to end up, because I don't think the people, or many of the people doing it, know where we came from. And you kind of have to know where you came from to know where you're going.
Yes. Yeah. So, you think about, where we came from, it was a dirty, greasy business, right? You're putting a container on a truck, it was almost a vocation, not a discipline, not an academic discipline. Mm-hmm. And, I think that where we might have some challenges is that we're trying to apply too much book smarts to what should be found in street smarts. What the truckers are doing, what the seafaring individuals are doing, what the crane operators are doing. They're making it or not making it happen at the end of the day. And we could apply all sorts of computer models and methodologies, but how does that convert? How does that knowledge convert to the people actually doing the work? So I think that supply chain is an interesting discipline in itself, because it relies so heavily on wrench turning, not just mathematical models. And I think that sometimes leaders have a tendency to be able to be salved with the mathematical models and the pretty pictures, but they don't see what's actually happening on the dock.
Maybe let's do it then and now, okay?
Yeah.
Both of you and I started in this business a very long time, and we came into a time when it actually changed. It was heavily containerized, ocean-wise, things were changing. But most people came into the business, when I came into the business, rose up through the ranks. They didn't just get a degree. And when I went to get my MBA in transportation distribution management, to most of the world, I was a unicorn. There were people in the business knew the schools were, and you had AST&L. You could, you took the test and you were certified. But, when you actually went into companies, there were people who learned by doing. And so, and maybe that wasn't good enough because they didn't rely on modeling and stuff. Today, we've jumped to modeling with people who might have gone to school but didn't come in with practical experience, and the schools are not teaching basic transportation, basic warehousing, ops management in the way I learned it in facility planning. They're teaching algorithmic, formulaic supply chain.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I've had talks, and this is a little bit out of school, but who knows where it goes. But I've had talks with academics about programs that want to go back and start teaching what used to be Transportation 101. This is a truck. This is what intermodal means. Warehousing 101. This is how racking is done. This is how you move flow goods through. And I think if we're going to change the supply chain dramatically over the long term and make it work, and even bring in the bots and everything, you still need someone who understands how a warehouse works on the floor.
I absolutely agree. And I think that academia has gotten away from that. And I'm not even sure that they taught it properly even back 30 years ago. And remember, 30 years is not a long time. 30 years is half of my career. Well, a little bit more than half, I guess.
I hope a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say a little bit more than half of my career. But it's not that long a time, and I think that it's a great opportunity, to take a look at the circumstances over the last 5 years and the things that have been challenged, and say, how did that really stress what we thought we knew? Right. We thought that just think 30 years ago, product wasn't moving to and fro the NAFTA borders from Mexico to the U.S. and back and forth again. And I read something like an automotive part travels from Windsor to Detroit something like 12 times before it ends up in its home, its final resting home. And you think about just that didn't happen 30 years ago. You had these industry clusters, and your suppliers were all right near where the end consumer of that material was going to be located. That's why you saw cities like Detroit boom for the automotive industry. They weren't all just automotive; they're the feeder stream for automotive. But now that automotive feeder stream is stretched around the world. But yet we're learning, or we're thinking of supply chain, I believe, in large part tethered to that local past. And this is where the stress test, if you will, of the last 5 years, I think challenges our native knowledge of what supply chain is and how it operates. And I think it's an opportunity for academia to look at that and investigate it, and maybe perhaps update their way of thinking in their curriculum.
I think so too. And I think it would be helpful because as much as we think, we're at the end of it, we're really at the beginning
Right.
of creating a true worldwide supply chain that works. That, we've talked before about lean and sort of how it's falling out of favor, and we're looking at a more holistic approach to supply chain. We're looking at politics, all the things we talked about
Yeah.
a while ago, and people talk about every day. But the truth is, and no one has any answers. The truth is everyone is searching, and we're searching together as an industry. And I think that, and this is, maybe this is because academia is academia. Instead of leading the way, it's sort of following, and it's sort of going with what's cool now. What's cool now is a bunch of numbers. So if you look through the Gartner rankings, for example, and you look at the schools that are at the top, many of them are very much, numeric based, or more based, on new technology. And some
Right.
of the older, more established programs have fallen behind. And I think we have to come to a way of amalgamating both sides of the thought process in this industry if we're really going to get to a true end. Because, again, I'm an old guy, but technology is a very good thing. And as you know, I have clients that do nothing but technology, and it's very interesting watching them do it. They get better when they have operations people working with them, people who've actually, been on the line, people who have, it's very funny nowadays. There's some executives who are getting senior positions, and they start with, they drove a truck. Well,
Right.
I tell you, I started in this business in 19, and when I started, virtually every CEO at the trucking companies I dealt with started as a truck driver.
And you don't see that anymore.
And I'm not saying that made them necessarily better, but it gave them, because I don't know if they could today deal with technology, but they understood everything from the truck driver level up. Some of the factors technology does not take into place, like unionism,
Right.
And it was a more well-rounded approach. And there has to come a point in time when we take that well-rounded approach and apply the technology to it, and not apply technology in a vacuum, which I think happens too often in the current scheme of things.
I agree with that. So, great food for thought. What do you think? Our audience will get enough value out of this to maybe question everything?
I think everyone's questioning everything. I think that's the one thing that is a real truth. I think some of the visionaries here, people, Elon Musk, a visionary who questioned how do you get to the moon the best? My friend Drew McElroy, who started, what was likely the first, e-broker, e-demand transportation service. People from, who started Kodiak Robotics or Aurora. Those people are truly changing things, and as visionaries. But I think they are coming to realize they need to find the intersection for reality. And certainly to sell long term, they have to sell something that's more concrete than a computer screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's good enough for today. A lot of good, juicy morsels in there, Ron. Thanks for taking the time and making this podcast as productive and as beneficial to the audience as possible. I've really appreciated everything that we've done up to this time, and I'm looking forward to doing more podcasts with you in the future. These are great.
Thank you, Joe. And I think, we talked about doing it this time, but I think next time we're going to come up with a special surprise guest.
I think so. We got to work on that together. So, all right, Ron, you have a great day. Thank you, everybody, for joining us at Supercharged Supply Chain. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to another edition of Supercharged Supply Chain with your hosts, Ron Liebman and Joseph Paris.
This presentation is for informational purposes only and is not offered as legal or professional advice regarding any particular matter. No person should act on the basis of this presentation without seeking appropriate professional advice. The speaker's views expressed in this program may not be reflective of those of anyone else, including their respective firms or any of its lawyers, associates, or clients.